What's up, guys? It is Jonathan with One Big Impact. So we're going to do a new style of video. As you all may know, I have been competitive powerlifting for a few years now, and I just wanted to kind of share some of the information. I would say this is a very beginner video on how to design a powerlifting program. The first thing that I would suggest is slow down, okay? If you're new here, check us out on Facebook. Our group is called Healthy Living for Healthy Life, and also on Instagram at One Big Impact. The number one, Big Impact, all one word. So go slow, okay? Make sure that you know how to squat properly, squat to depth. You can walk the bar out, you can do reps and stuff like that, stay injury free. Make sure you can do a deadlift properly, stand up, fully erect and everything, and then put it down without dropping it. And then a bench, make sure you can come down to your chest, you can pause it, and you can put it back up and rack it. And the only reason I say those things is because you really want to make sure that your foundation is great before you move forward. Don't focus on so much becoming this crazy competitive power lifter as becoming a good clean lifter. That's it. Focus on the fundamentals and then move forward. That being said, the first thing that I wanted to talk about is time frame. How long does it take you to get into a powerlifting meet? If you are not signed up for a powerlifting meet, I fully suggest that you should immediately. And I know that might sound crazy. Find a local federation, whether it's WRPF or USAPL or USPA or UPA or any of those federations, and get signed up for something about, if you can, at least roughly 12 or more weeks away. If you can get it 12 weeks away, that would be absolutely perfect. If you can get it 16 or 20, maybe that'd even be greater. If you are not a lifter, maybe 3 to 6 months out would be great. If you need to learn the foundations of the lift. But the time frame of 12 weeks, getting signed up will really help you focus on making sure that you're going to be able to get stronger during this process and you're not going to feel rushed. You have plenty of time to rest in between and stuff like that. So the first thing, like I said, is time frame. Now you can do this in 4 weeks. You can do this in 8 weeks. You can do this in 12 weeks. You can do it in a year. You can do it whenever you want, okay? I personally would suggest 4, 8, or 12 week waves. And the reason I say that is, and out of those three, I would say 8 or 12, and then out of one of those, I would say 12 is probably best. And the reason I say that is because you go 3 weeks through a strength phase and then you deload, 3 weeks through a strength phase and you deload, and then 3 weeks through a peaking and you deload. And that way you're not feeling completely shot or beat up, and you get PRs that first 3 weeks and then you're just destroyed for the next 8 weeks. So make sure you have a proper amount of time to get rest in there. Powerlifting is not completely linear. You do have to raise the intensity and relax, and raise the intensity a little bit more and relax, and raise the intensity a little more and relax, and then compete. So make sure you understand that this goes in waves. It's not like continuously putting weight on the bar. Otherwise, we would all bench 1 million pounds and it wouldn't be fun. The next thing is how many times per week should I squat? How many times per week should I bench? How many times per week should I deadlift? And this goes all over the place, and you can err towards the lighter side of this. You can err towards the heavier side of this. Guys that have physical jobs and were walking on their feet, maybe you would consider the lighter end of this. If it is a female that has a sit-down job, maybe she could do the heavier end of that. And it just depends on age, a lot of things. I would recommend at least squatting 1 to 3 times per week. I would say, especially if you're a new lifter, do some type of variation of squat at least 3 times a week. Bench, I would say 2.5 to 4 times per week. Deadlifts, I would say 1 to 3 times per week, including variations. I am not saying go deadlift heavy 3 times per week. but some form of a variation of a deadlift or an assistance deadlift at least 1 to 3 times per week. If you're a very advanced lifter, you've probably already got your shit figured out and you're not watching this video. Number 4 is stagger more at first. And what I mean by that, when you say you're starting in a 12-week phase in which you are going to be doing a strength phase and a deload and a strength phase and a deload and a peaking and a deload, or a peaking and a taper, which is basically a deload, and then boom, you compete. What I mean is, in the first 3-week phase, I would suggest keeping your squat fairly away from your deadlift, and then keeping your bench or keeping your. So let me clear this up. Okay, so let's pretend it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, so squat would be really heavy on Monday. On Wednesday, you'd bench really heavy. And then on Friday, you deadlift really heavy. Meaning keep your deadlift away from your squat so that it doesn't plague each other's days. If you come in and you are fresh and you are hitting high percentages, 70%, 80%, 100%, whatever it is that you're trying to hit, and you squat really heavy, you're going to be fucked up by Wednesday and you're not going to be optimal for deadlifting. So in the beginning, I would do something like, on Monday, you squat really heavy, and then I would do like an assistance bench afterwards, and then maybe like a deficit deadlift to work on your weaknesses at like 60%, so you're not completely trashed by Wednesday, because Wednesday you're going to do your heavy bench, and then you're going to do like maybe like an RDL, which is a less aggressive assistance exercise for deadlifts, and then maybe like a front squat. So then, which is a little bit more quad dominant than a back squat would be, low bar back squat would be on Monday, then you're front squatting on Wednesday, and then come Friday, you're fresh and ready to deadlift, and then you can hit like a high bar or some other type of variation. If you suck at low bar, maybe you want to hit low bar again or something like that. But I would suggest probably not doing that with deadlifts because of the forward lean in a low bar squat can really trash your back trying to do that. And the reason I say it to set it up like this, and this is not the perfect way, but you can follow that, it's perfectly fine. The reason I say is because in the beginning, squatting, benching, and deadlifting really fucking heavy is extremely difficult. And it's not that you can't do it, it's just that at the beginning it won't be super optimal. After your first 3-week phase, you can bring those in to where they're a little bit closer to each other. Maybe the second 3-week phase, you can do heavy squat, and maybe by Wednesday you're good and you can do a deadlift or something like that. So it won't have to be as far. And then just slowly you're kind of bringing them into, as you peak out, you're getting those squat, bench, and deadlifts in closer to each other because the volume has gone down and you feel not so beat up, if that makes sense. Number 5 is, how many days a week are you going to train? You have to be very realistic. I would never do less than 3 days a week for strength. 2 days a week, you're going to be in the gym 5 fucking hours a day, and that's just stupid. Okay, you're not going to be able to optimally train above 90% or 80% 2 days per week for 5 fucking hours. It's just not going to happen, because considering you don't have a lot of time, if you're having a time constraint or something like that, then you're busy, and that means you're fucking tired when you go to the gym, so you're not going to have it. I would say 4 is probably a good sweet spot, but it just depends. If you have a more relaxed schedule, I'm a gym owner, so I'm in the fucking gym all the time. Like, I can make time for it. 3 days works, but when you're really advanced and stuff like that, it becomes a huge pain in the ass. Because your sessions are 3 or 4 hours, and it's just a lot to stay amped up and fired up for that amount of time, and you just get very fatigued mentally. So 4 days, 5 days is perfectly fine. I wouldn't stretch it out to 6 or 7, because then you're just really not getting the amount of robust stimulus that you would for bodybuilding. That's probably perfectly fine, and it is perfectly fine. But for powerlifting, you want big chunks so that you can really prepare yourself for 9 big, huge lifts on actual meet day. The volume. Number 6, volume. Let me talk about this a little bit. I don't feel like the hypertrophy thing is something that needs to be talked about hugely, because I think people, for some reason, want to be jacked and strong. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I think more importantly, if you're a powerlifter, you have to focus on what is making me really strong. There's genetic freaks out there. You got Jamal Browner and stuff like that. But a lot of those people that are jacked and strong could be enhanced, could not be, and I'm not saying they are or aren't. It depends on the person. But some people may just be genetically built that way, or they could be using gear or performance enhancing drugs or something like that. So that being said, it is what it is. So keep up the mindset that you understand that. That does not mean that you don't do hypertrophy. Hypertrophy for powerlifting is focused on the big 3 rather than focused on aesthetics. So keep that in mind. Strength phase, 3 to 6 sets a day. Okay, 70 to 90%. Hypertrophy, 6 to 12 sets a day. 50 to 80, 50 to 75, 50 to 85, whatever you feel. And then peaking is going to be 1 to 3 sets a day, and 85%, 90% and above. It kind of depends on, it could be even go down to 70%, and you can just taper up as you get closer and stuff like that. Hypertrophy, low volume per week would be like 5 to 8 sets, like a maintenance volume. And then I would say the high volume, like really trying to build up a certain part of your body, would be like 18 to 25 sets per week. I don't think you should be doing 25 sets of bicep curls 2 weeks out from meet. You have to keep that in mind, that you have to lower your volume as you go. So maybe you start at the high end of 18 sets or something like that. And then by the time you get to a meet, maybe it's down to 5 or 8, and you've tapered away from that to give your body time to recover. Strength phase, I would say 3 to 6 is pretty low, and then 12 to 18 sets per week of working sets. And then peaking, I would say the low would be 1 to 4 sets per week, and then the high being 8 to 12 sets per week. And obviously, you have to play these things by ear, and you have to kind of figure out what works for you. Maybe you recover really well. I'm 41 years old, and I feel like I recover pretty damn well for everything besides bench. When my squat gets really close to my bench, I have a hard time recovering and stuff like that. But other than that, I recover really well for deadlifts and stuff. So as you progress from one strength phase to the next, you're going to reduce your volume just slightly. Excuse me. If you are doing 10 sets per week for a squat in the first 3-week phase, maybe the next 3-week phase you're going to do 7 or 8 sets per week, because as your volume goes up, your intensity, or as your volume goes down, your intensity will go up, meaning the amount of weight will go up, but the amount of sets will go down, so that you can kind of meet those two in the middle. So keep that in mind. It's going to have to meet, otherwise you're just going to have a ridiculously difficult time trying to display that strength. So basically, like I said before, some way you could put this together is like Monday squat. After that, maybe an extra wide bench or something like that if you're slow off the chest. Deficit deadlifts. Wednesday you could do bench, heavy, RDLs, and then front squats. And then Friday you could do deadlift, high bar, and maybe close grip. And then even maybe throw a Saturday in there, and then you do something like JM presses, maybe some delt stuff, maybe some lat work, and just different accessories or something like that. The best way I would say is maybe do something like this, especially because you're going to get a lot more volume. You could do something like for your squat on Monday, on the first 3-week phase, you could do like a 7 to 8 RPE. And what that means is like you have a couple left in the tank at the end. Do a 5 rep max, and say you do 300, okay? 300 for 5, and you're like, yeah, I had a couple left, but it was pretty hard. And then do some back down sets, 4 sets of 5, 4 sets of 6, something like that, at like 10 to 15, 10 to 20% less, depending on how you felt. If that top set of the 5 rep max was really difficult, then drop it just ever so slightly down to make yourself feel like you can complete all 5 sets. If that first set's a grinder, you need to drop, a few percent off the bar and make sure you get through them. If the working sets, those back down sets are extremely difficult, you can walk away from them. I don't suggest it. Getting used to having that weight on your back over and over and over can be really like a very learned process. So if you just say, oh, I got my top set, and you walk away all the time, understanding what it feels like to have hundreds of pounds on your back over and over and over, you may not get the experience needed. So by the second week, and I'm just using squats, you can go to like an 8.5 RPE or 9 RPE to do a 5 rep max, and then back down sets from that number. So that number of the 5 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 6 or 4 sets of 6 will slightly go down your back down sets, or slightly go up, because your top number went up. So for instance, if you did the first week 300-pound squats for 5 reps, and then you did back down sets, 4 sets of 6, or 4 sets of 5, or 5 sets of 5, depending on what you prefer, at 285. By next week, maybe you did 315, 320 for your top set, and then now your back down sets are 295 or 305 even. So you're slowly adding weight to the bar, and then the next week, on the 3rd week, go to like a 10 RPE and really max out and see what you can do. Maybe you can do 350, 335, 345. In the first 3 weeks of this, on your first strength cycle, I would err on the side of caution. I would err if you start the wave at 300. Maybe the next week I would do 315. Maybe the next week I would do 335. I probably wouldn't go to 350. Maybe you feel like you can do it, and here's the reason why. Because if you fuck yourself up on this first 3 weeks, you have 8 weeks left to be able to produce, and it's going to be difficult to push if you completely trashed yourself a week and a half in because you were thinking that you could do more than you can do. And then on that next week, this is the way I personally deload. On that fourth week, maybe you don't feel like you need to deload, but I would fully recommend it, especially if you're 12 weeks out from a meet. Just give yourself the week. I would say your squat, your bench, and your deadlift, I would do sets of 5 at 40% of your max, 50% of your max, and 60% of your max. I would do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I would keep up the assistance work, whatever it was, whether it was leg press or RDLs or anything like that. But those big lifts, you need to just bring those down. You can also do it a different way. You could do roughly the same weights that you normally do for maybe half the sets, 50 to 60% of half the sets. But I really like the 4, 5, 6 rule. And that way, when you start out next week, you've still been moving weight, and it doesn't feel excruciatingly difficult. And then when you start that next strength phase, once you come into that point, you may be very eager, on that first RP 7 week that you've cycled back to say, well, on my last one, I ended at 350, so I'm going to start with 360. No. What I would suggest is if you went from 300 first week, 320 second week, 350 second week or third week, I would say 320, 325, somewhere right in the middle. That's where I would start out your next strength phase. Remember, especially if you haven't competed, everything's a fucking PR. Like, don't overthink it. You don't have to hit a 2,000 pound total on the first day. It's not gonna fucking happen. It may be, but just go slow with it. And then by the end of that 3-week phase, you ended the last one at 350, maybe you'll end the next one at 380, 370, 365, whatever it is. If it's a little bit more, then you're great. And then when you start peaking, I will do a separate video on that, but start to slowly take out some assistance work and some sets and stuff like that. If you want to know more about that video, I will have you stay tuned. Just say, hey, I want a peaking video. What's going on? I am going to compete on Saturday. I just did just a little bit of my credentials right now. Recently, my biggest lifts in the gym are 675 on the deadlift, which felt like I had 700. My bench, 360 I hit the other day. And I got really long arms, so I got a pretty good deadlift, but my bench is coming. And then my squat, I hit 615 the other day. So hopefully to hit somewhere around those numbers. One thing that you don't want to become obsessed with going into a powerlifting meet is understanding that if you are squatting and you're doing like a squat PR in the gym, you're not doing that 3 times. You're not benching 3 times. And you're not deadlifting 3 times. So gym PRs can't be really compared with PRs at a competition. Maybe I got 675 in the gym on a deadlift, but after 9 lifts that day and lifting all day and stuff like that, probably not going to be the same number. It could be significantly less, it could be the same, it could be more. It just depends on how everything goes. So don't be like, oh, I lifted 615 on the squat, I should lift 625 in the competition. Maybe that's the thing. I would say your squat usually is going to be the closest to what it was in training. Why? Because it's first. So that's going to be usually the most accurate according to everything, as long as you taper well and you get lots of rest before. So maybe take an ice bath before then. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I know this was kind of all over the place. Maybe I'll get a whiteboard out next time and talk about it a little bit more. But feel free to ask. Be stronger than your excuses. Happy lifting. Be careful. Use spotters and fucking use clips. Goodbye.